You're listening to New England Real Estate Journal Radio with Rick Kaplan, New England's source for commercial real estate news. This is New England Real Estate Journal Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
Welcome to the New England Real Estate Journal Radio Show. I'm Rick Kaplan with normally my co-host Eric Wilson. He is out doing a presentation today. Actually, he's at the NEMA event at Gillette Center, Gillette Stadium. But I have a special co-host, Dennis Serpone, from New England Restaurant Brokers. Thanks for coming in.
Good morning.
Dennis.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. And Dennis will also be talking a little bit about his industry, the restaurant brokers, and some of the restaurant listings he might have. And also he's looking for some new brokers if you're interested in a new profession. But today's show is brought to you by the New England Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 50 years. Find us at nerej.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nerej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email radio@nerej.com. You know, I got brand new glasses. I'm trying to adjust to them. So.
You look good. You look good in glasses.
Well, now if I can only see out of them, that's the problem. But last week we had some great events we went to. We went to, from IREM, they put together this tour of the state houses. This one was in New Hampshire at the Concord State House, which was a long drive for me, but we went anyways. It was a great event. Eric was there on time, which I wasn't. I went to see Boz Skaggs at the Emerson Colonial Theater. You know, they did they're doing over that whole area downtown, right on.
Are you from that era? The Boz Skaggs era?
Unfortunately, I am, but but he was great. And he had this woman that was singing, Miss Monet, Minot, something like that. She was unbelievable as well. But after that, we went to dinner at P.F. Chang's around the corner. And the food was unbelievable.
Was this a product placement?
Yeah, I know. I'm giving them a free plug. But we had a great waiter. His name was Dan. So if you go into P.F. Chang's in that area, ask for Dan. He did a great job. And I think that's about all well, I know Eric did a bunch of things, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. We'll have to wait until he comes back.
It's kind of quiet around here without him.
Yeah, it's quiet everywhere right now, except for at Gillette Stadium. So, did you do anything special last week, Dennis?
Yes. Actually, as an aside, I opened an office on the Cape in West Yarmouth, and primarily I get involved with the Cape because when I first started in the business, I had a chain of restaurants. Right after grad school, I built a chain of restaurants on the Cape. I ran them for 10 years, and then when I went to sell them, I realized there was nobody back in 1980 that specialized in restaurants and knew anything about restaurant sales. So anyways, I spent 10 years down there. But now I went back because we're flipping houses on the Cape. And the flipping of houses on the Cape is more fun than selling restaurants.
I'm sure.
And so I opened an office on the Cape, and we're handling not only restaurants but hotels. So we're the hotel restaurant specialists on Cape Cod.
Well, that's good content for our interview when we come back from our break.
Yeah, absolutely.
But right now, I want to tell you who the show is brought to you by, none other than the New England Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 50 years. Find us at nerej.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nerej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email radio@nerej.com. And we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
The next level in commercial real estate. This is New England Real Estate Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan, and I'm here with Dennis Serpone, my co-host for the day. And today's show, this interview with Dennis, is brought to you by New England Restaurant Brokers, recognized leader in the sale of food and liquor businesses for over 30 years. New England Restaurant Brokers, team of restaurant specialists, have sold hundreds of food and liquor businesses. If you're looking to buy, sell, or develop a food or liquor business, call New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or go to nerestaurantbrokers.com. Again, that's New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or email nerb@comcast.net. That's nerb@comcast.net. And we're here talking with Dennis Serpone of New England Restaurant Brokers. And he wants to tell us about a new office he has down the Cape.
We opened up an office in West Yarmouth. I got a call about 3 or 4 months ago from a broker on the Cape that I hadn't talked to in 10 years. And he called me and he says, Dennis, he says, I have an incredible property for sale. He says, I need your help selling it. I said, what is it? He says, it's a pub that does $6 million a year, which is a huge number for Cape Cod. He says, I really don't know who to bring it to. So I did some homework, and I started to realize that there was nobody on the Cape that's really specialized in what we do. So one of the houses we bought in West Yarmouth, we converted to an office, and now we have a presence on the Cape. So every weekend I'm on the Cape, which is mixing business and pleasure.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a bad gig.
Not a bad gig at all. It forces me to eat out in the restaurants on the Cape.
Yeah, so now you know which restaurants to go to, and you can vacation on weekends and write it off, right?
And I write off everything anyway. So, interestingly enough, I am looking for, business has been so incredibly active that we've got 20 brokers right now, but we're really missing some of the market, and we'd like to add at least another 5 to 10 brokers. So if there's anybody out there has an affinity for sales, there's no training, no experience necessary. As long as you have an affinity and you like to learn the business, we'll train you part-time, full-time, whatever you want to do. But it's a relatively easy business, but you just got to work it.
So, someone that's unemployed, let's say,
And
they haven't had an income coming in, and they want to start a new career, this might be a good choice for them.
Great business. Great. It's also a good business for someone who already has a career, who's not fully utilizing their time, and they want to do something different. It seems to me not a lot of people, but some of the people who retire find themselves all of a sudden with nothing to do.
Right.
So now this is a way of filling in some of that dead time with a very, very lucrative business. And you can easily make $50,000 to $100,000 a year part-time just kind of playing with this business if you didn't even want to do it on a full-time basis.
The phone should be lighting up
They
for
should
you
be.
right now.
I would think so.
Because
I would hope so.
Anyone that you tell, part-time job making $50,000 to $100,000 a year,
I
think Corey just started calling your office.
One of my best brokers, she was a school teacher, getting ready to retire. So about 6 months before she retired, she started working with me, and she didn't complete any deals in the first 6 months. In her second 6 months, she closed 5 deals. She's my best broker right now, and I think it has to do with her training as a teacher, her patience tolerance. But it's a huge opportunity for somebody who really wants to work at doing something.
So in 8 months, she had
5 deals.
5 deals.
And
that's pretty good.
She's great. She's a phenomenal. She's a pit bull. She never stops, and she enjoys it. It's not about making money. It's about doing something. And she just loves the interaction with the restaurant owners, with buyers. She just has this real social attitude.
Right.
So it's really good.
So let's say you're selling a property, unless the buyer has got their own cash, who does the financing on this?
It's 99% seller financed. Unless you've got great if you're a seller and you've got great tax returns, then the SBA will help you finance it. On the other hand, majority of restaurants don't show, in quotes, don't show their net profit. So banks are reluctant to finance. So it falls upon the seller to either finance or try to find an all-cash buyer. Most of the times, 99% of the times, the seller has to take back 50% in paper. So they finance it typically over 3 to 5 years at 6% interest. So it's not bad interest, and you don't pay the capital gain tax if you were taking a lump sum on an all-cash deal.
Right, and if the restaurant is going in a bad direction, they can always take it back.
You can always take it back.
No, they probably don't want to.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because a lot of times I hear that. Typically what happens, if a seller takes back paper, and let's say the buyer puts up 50% and pays a year or two into it and then finds he's not capable of maintaining it and defaults, rather than give it back to the seller because he's still on the hook for the balance of the money, even though he gives it back, the fact of the matter is they call me up and they'll say, Dennis, do me a favor, get me out of this. And so we resell it. And typically we've resold them at a higher price. So it's only happened twice in 33 years that a seller has actually taken the place back.
Yeah, it's funny because people say, restaurant brokers, what's that have to do with commercial real estate? Well, it has everything to do with commercial real estate. Almost every commercial real estate retail property has some type of restaurant or food concession.
Absolutely. It's interesting. When I first looked into opening up in restaurant, doing restaurant brokerage, I looked at the market. And as I drove down the street, every street corner has some form of food or liquor. It's a liquor store, a convenience store, a restaurant, a sub shop, ad nauseum. They're everywhere. Really? So it's a huge, huge market.
Well, even like convenience stores.
Convenience stores are the hottest thing in the market.
Yeah, but I mean, that would be something in the same
absolutely
as your business. And I'm sure you probably have that opportunity to sell those type of business. But a lot of them now have their own sandwich-making facility.
I got to tell you a funny story, if you got a minute.
I got a couple minutes.
I got a call from an accountant that I know, and he said, Dennis, he said, would you be interested in handling a convenience store that one of my clients has? They need to sell it. It's in Jamaica Plain. I wasn't overly excited about going to Jamaica Plain for a convenience store, thinking it's a little hole-in-the-wall convenience store, like most convenience stores. So I went down to see it. It was a beautiful brick building on a big plot of land with parking, off-street parking, and we sold it for $2.1 million.
Wow.
Huge deal, beautiful property, and I almost walked away from it. So it runs the gamut from the little places to the big places. And we've handled everything from little sub shops to the Hilltop. We sold the Hilltop in 1989 for $15 million. Now it's closed and back on the market for $15 million. So
for how much?
$15 million. Well, now it's just the land.
Yeah, so it's just
back then I sold it with the going restaurant that was doing phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, if it was still going like it was back then, I mean, that would be worth $50 million.
It was an unbelievable restaurant.
That was I remember the lines that
was the key to the place. Was Sioux City, Kansas City.
Right. Yeah, they keep yelling it out on the loudspeaker. Yeah. No, that was an interesting concept. But a concept is really what you need when you're opening up a restaurant. You were mentioning Wahlburgers,
Oh, I went to. I was aware that they were opening up on the Hingham waterfront, so we went down to see it. And at the time, the show hadn't, their Wahlburgers show hadn't started. So we walked in and had a hamburger. It was a good hamburger, but nothing unusual. But the facility was beautiful. And instead of sports on the TV screens, it was all Mark Wahlberg's movies. So you sat there and had your hamburger. Yeah, exactly. But I went back down there this past February on a holiday weekend, and I went in there on a Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and they were back at the door. There was a 2-hour wait to get in. I went back the next day hoping to get a sandwich, and the same people were standing in line, another 2-hour wait. So the show has done has been incredible value for them. It's a great, they got a great thing going.
You take any restaurant, you put on a weekly TV show. Now, I don't know if it's still on, but if you put on a weekly TV show and you have two brothers that are very famous, and they have an acting career, and they're in making.
How do you
movies.
lose?
Yeah, I mean, you really can't lose. They could be selling a piece of toast, and they're still going to have lines out at the door. You know,
it's interesting. I received a call from a production company in Los Angeles that was interested in doing a show about what we're doing here in Boston, and they're involved with flipping the TV show Flipping Boston. So they were interested in doing a show now called Flipping Cape Cod, and that's what we're doing, is flipping houses on Cape Cod. So that's an aside to our restaurant business on the Cape.
Yeah, well, when we come back from the break, we can talk a little bit about, your new venture with the Cape Cod flipping houses. And we can also finish up talking about some of the other things that you do.
And the restaurants that are for sale.
Right, and you help some of these restaurants as well once the sale is completed, isn't that?
Yes.
You
we'll
help them with some of the accounting and things like that. Show them how
NERB services. Yes.
NERB. And we'll be, actually, before we go to the break, our interview with Dennis is brought to you by New England Restaurant Brokers, recognized leader in the sale of food and liquor businesses for over 30 years. New England Restaurant Brokers' team of restaurant specialists have sold hundreds of food and liquor businesses. If you're looking to buy, sell, or develop a food or liquor business, call New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or go to nerestaurantbrokers.com. Again, that's New England Restaurant Brokers at 617-721-9655 or email nerb@comcast.net. That's nerb@comcast.net, and you can ask for Dennis.
I may answer the phone.
Yeah, he might answer the phone, or he'll direct you to the right person to help you. And we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
Rick Kaplan and Eric Wilson, right here on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with my co-host Eric Wilson, who's not here today, but we have filling in for us is Dennis Serpone of New England Restaurant Brokers. And today's second half of our interview with Dennis is brought to you by, do you sell to facilities managers, building owners, or property managers? See thousands of these decision makers by exhibiting at the 9th Annual Northeast Building and Facilities Management Show and Conference, June 18th and 19th at the Boston Convention Center. The show and conference are sponsored by 12 local and regional associations, including IFMA, BOMA, AEE, and IREM. Premium booth space is now available. For information on exhibiting, go to proexpos.com. That's proexpos.com. And we have here with us Dennis Serpone, and we were talking in the first half about some restaurants that are for sale. Listings that Dennis has that he's going to tell us about, and also some of the houses that he's flipping down the Cape.
For those of you who are commercial brokers out there, we obviously haven't been in business this many years. We've done a lot of business co-broking our properties. So either brokers will call us, or when we get a listing and we need some assistance, we call the other commercial brokers, business brokers. This one that I mentioned on the Cape that this other broker called me on is a phenomenal opportunity. Very, very few businesses, especially in the Cape, which is typically seasonal, can do $6 million a year. We have a restaurant on the Cape. I can't tell you where it is. It's extremely confidential. This has never been on the market. This is an incredibly successful, very profitable restaurant. It does $6 million a year in sales. Half of that is liquor.
Wow.
With a high profit margin. So, and the only reason it's on the market is the two brothers are retiring. And so they really just want to sail off into the sunset. So for a business and real estate in a very, very nice town, they're asking $7 million. And we have banking already in place, financing's in place for it. So anybody who's got the wherewithal, and this probably won't be an individual, it would be a restaurant chain or a consortium of restaurateurs. This is an exceptional opportunity. I don't think it's on our website. Our website is NE for New England, nerestaurantbrokers.com. I'm not sure I put it out there because it's so exclusive.
Kind of is it
it's a restaurant pub.
Oh, so
restaurant pub.
Someone could change it to whatever type of, but you would.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. So
no, this is just this net profit at $750,000 a year. I mean, just an incredible opportunity.
What type of food is it? Is it
American fare, pub fare? It's just it's not unique in the culinary end of the industry.
But it's good.
It's excellent, and it's been there a long time and is very successful.
So let me ask you a question: a seasonal type of area like the Cape, if they don't make their, let's say you have a bad season, it's raining the whole year.
I've been there.
Yeah,
yeah. Exactly.
Well, actually, I would think restaurants probably do better when it's a rainy season because people go on vacation, they come down there, and there's nothing to do but eat. Not that I don't do that all the time, just to eat. But
when I first opened, I had a small pub in West Yarmouth in a shopping center, and there was a little candle maker next door to me. It may have been the forerunner of Yankee Candle, I'm not sure. But anyway, we had it was great summer, and one day it was raining, and I'm in the restaurant. We're running around crazy. And I took a break, and I went next door to see the candle guy, and he's on his register, and he's ringing up candle after candle. I says, don't you believe that this is happening? Rain, rain, rain. He goes, Dennis, aren't you happy? I said, no, it's raining. He goes, Dennis, they're not on the beach.
Yeah,
they're in your place eating, and I'm selling them candles.
Right.
All of a sudden, my eyes opened up. I go, wow. So the problem with the problem, if you will, with the seasonality of the business is you have to make it in the summer. And if you don't make it in the summer, all the profit you made in the summer, you give back in the winter.
Right. So you have to have enough volume for the summer months to carry.
Well, the smart thing, which I resisted because I thought I was king of the hill, being open year round. I had 3 pubs open year round. But the fact of the matter is, I used to look askance at the guys who closed.
Yeah.
They were smarter than me.
Right.
Because they took their money and closed and came back the next year to make more money.
Yeah, so they were on vacation.
They were, absolutely. So you live and learn.
Yeah. So any other bargains out there?
I do. I have a great situation in West Bridgewater. I've got a freestanding restaurant. Does about $7,000 a week. Very cheap rent. The owner is an absentee owner. He was never in the restaurant business. He has a beer and wine license, and he's only asking $99,000 with $40,000 cash required. In other words, somebody could be in a beer and wine, a pizza, or a takeout, whatever you want to do there, for $40,000. You can't buy a car for $40,000.
Right.
So that's a very, very wonderful opportunity. I've another one. I've got another gentleman who bought a restaurant in the same general area, West Bridgewater. Spent every nickel and dime he had renovating this beautiful building. He's doing a solid $15,000 a week, and he's asking $125,000 cash for the place. You can walk in the place; it's unbelievable. So
are these restaurants in operation right now?
Oh yeah, everything's in operation. I've got a pizza place in the Salem Beverly area. It does $10,000 a week, and they're only asking $115,000. That place is worth at least $200,000. Retiring, some people are just tired of the business. I have another one in the Concord, Wayland, Lincoln area, affluent communities, doing $30,000 a week. The seller was the financing partner of this operation. He lost his partner chef, so he's running this place with no food experience, just basically going to walk away from this. And he's only asking $400,000 with $200,000 down. Great opportunity to be in a very affluent market. Very rare to have a full liquor license in a full, beautiful restaurant available. 6,000 square feet, 230 seats, outside patio. Excellent opportunity, motivated seller. So if somebody is interested in getting into a full-service restaurant in an affluent town, that's the listing to take. So that anybody interested, just give me a call, 617-721-9655, or email me. You can email me directly, Serpone, DSERPONE, Serpone at Comcast.net. And I'll be more than happy to give you all the information.
And some of these are on your website?
They're all on the website, except for the one on the Cape Cod.
Oh, okay. So
NE for New England, NE Restaurant Brokers, NERestaurantBrokers.com.
Well, that's great. I mean, those sound like great opportunities for someone.
And I've others. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, just a select few. But, I mean, if someone's looking for a restaurant, they call you, and you'll probably be able to find them something in the area they're looking.
Yeah.
So now it brings me to the matter of how did you get into flipping houses from selling restaurants? You should have been in flipping restaurants.
Oh my God! Yeah, I have a brother. When I was on the Cape, little by little, my whole family migrated to the Cape, and then I sold everything and moved back to Boston. So they were all down there. And my nephew is a real estate broker connected with a large company. My brother is a contractor, and we were sitting around one night talking about this burgeoning market of people flipping houses, and we sat around and said, "Why can't we do it?" And so my brother is the overseer of all the construction. My nephew finds the foreclosures. He knows what the market is. And I basically just help them out raising money for the construction.
And that's all you do?
That's all I do.
So you're the money man.
They do the heavy lifting.
The other money man, they're the workers. That's not a bad gig either.
Every Sunday I'm on the Cape, and we do tours of the properties we've developed and properties in process and so forth, and intermingled with showing restaurants, and we're now doing hotels.
So now someone buys a restaurant on the Cape. Now you say, "Oh well, I also have a house for you, so you don't have to be too far away from it." Right. So it all works out.
Bring your family down.
Yeah. And it's a great place to vacation as well. Yeah.
I didn't appreciate it. When I was on the Cape back in the 70s and 80s, I was only working. So I came down Route 6, went to the restaurant, turned around and went home. I never really appreciated the Cape. Now I love the Cape. The Cape is great country.
When I was a kid, my father had a house on the Cape. But I never went down there, and I never really enjoyed going to the Cape because it was always just back-to-back traffic.
Traffic is brutal.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what you get when you go to the Cape. But if you're on vacation, you don't care.
Take it easy.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, well, I appreciate all that information, Dennis. And we have a guest that we're going to call in a few minutes when we come back from the break. His name is Mir Ezra. Mir Ezra. I'll find out his correct name when I get him on the phone. But he tells people how to succeed in business and what helps you succeed in business. He goes around and he has these seminars all over the place. But he'll be on the phone. He's in Florida right now, but he's going to call us and we're going to have an interview with him. And he'll tell us how to all be successful. But right now, our interview with Dennis, the second half of our interview with Dennis, was brought to you by, do you sell to facility managers, building owners, or property managers? See thousands of these decision makers by exhibiting at the 9th Annual Northeast Buildings and Facilities Management Show and Conference, June 18th and 19th at the Boston Convention Center. The show and conference are sponsored by 12 local and regional associations, including IFMA, BOMA, AEE, and IREM. Premium booth space is now available. For information on exhibiting, go to proexpos.com. That's proexpos.com, and we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
Rick Kaplan is right here on the Money Matters Radio Network.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with my co-host Derek Wilson, who's not here today, but we have Dennis Serpone, who's filling in as co-host, and you're doing a great job so far, Dennis. I appreciate it.
I'm a weak fill-in for Eric.
No, I think you're a replacement for Eric.
Of Korea?
Yeah. And our next part of our show is brought to you by Command Security Corporation. Is the nation's most trusted and experienced provider of affordable contract security services. Command Security Corporation, with offices nationwide and operations at numerous major international airports, they provide complete, customized, and cost-effective security solutions for industries, businesses, institutions, and organizations of all sizes. To find out how Command Security Corporation can solve your security needs, contact John Dunleavy at 800-791-9900. 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com. That's John Dunleavy at 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com. And we did have our guest, Mir Ezra, who is a specialist. He has these seminars that he puts on about how to make your business successful and what the right things and the wrong things to do. Unfortunately, he's doing a presentation in Florida. We were trying to set up the time, and I guess he got tied up. So we're going to have to talk to him at another time, unfortunately. But Dennis has a lot of things to talk about. And he has one of the most important things when you're buying restaurants. You have, there's a few important things. Why don't you go into a little bit about some of the steps you need to have or follow?
Well, the biggest obstacle to selling a restaurant is determining its value. Every buyer has a number that's off the charts, and every seller has a number off the charts, and every buyer doesn't want to pay for anything. So somewhere in between the seller wanting top dollar and the buyer not wanting to pay anything, you've got a value. Typically, a restaurant has three values. It's the gross sales, which is your goodwill, the value of the lease, and then the value of the equipment. In that order, the gross sales determines really the value. So all things being equal, once you've determined what the market value is, and sometimes restaurateurs, urged by professionals, their accountants and lawyers will say, gee, you ought to get an appraisal of the business. And there's a formal way to appraise a business. And that's all well and good for liability purposes. But the real value of a restaurant is really its market value. And unless you're in the streets, unless you're talking to people, unless you're dealing with buyers and sellers, it's hard to determine what the real value is. We find that we have the real value. In other words, if I sit down and I review what you have to sell, I can pretty much within 10 or 20% tell you exactly what it's going to sell for and what the terms are. A lot of times it's not just the value of the business in terms of its gross value, but also the terms. Because if you've got a restaurant and you want all cash, you're probably not going to get full value. If on the other hand, you need very little down payment and you're willing to finance over a long period, you can get top dollar.
See, now this works a little differently than a commercial
real estate
or even residential real estate, because you're sort of representing both parties.
And in some states that's illegal.
Yeah.
But yeah, because my job is to make the deal. My job is to find that medium ground where both buyer and seller win. So if it isn't a win-win, one way or another, the lawyer kills the deal, or the accountant kills the deal, or the wife or the seller kills the deal. So it's really you're walking a fine line.
But you must have more control over the deal because you're working with both sides.
Yes, right. As long as the parties are receptive. Sometimes you have a seller who's fixed in his mind, he knows what he wants, and that's all he's going to get. And many times we walk away from a seller like that because you're not going to be able to compromise with them. On the other hand, you have the buyer who's the same way. If he can't still, he's not buying it. I've got a client that owns 47. He owns pieces of 47 different restaurants, and what he does is he just looks for the person who's desperate, makes him a lowball offer, and then gets it for next to nothing.
So, and they stay in ownership. The people.
Some of them do. Some of them do. They form a joint venture sometimes, and then they build it up and flip it. So there's a whole flipping to the restaurant business also.
Right.
Buy somebody's distress and then fix it and then sell it.
So you build up their business and then you sell it. I mean, I've heard that is common with like sub shops and places.
Very,
like that.
very prominent in sub shops. Easy, low tech businesses, breakfast, lunch places, sub shops. The ones you can't really do, you can't really go in that direction of the bigger restaurants because you so many different facets to the operation.
Right. I mean, that's a major operation. That it's not something you can just pick up and flip.
Right.
But something that's 100, 150 grand. Much easier to flip those.
Well, there are buyers out there. If you look at a let's say for argument's sake, a pizza shop that's doing $5,000 or $6,000 a week. I mean, you can still make yourself $80,000 to $100,000 a year at it, but there's buyers out there will look at that and right away recognize that with a little tweaking, they can get the volume up to 8, 9, 10,000 a week. And so they'll buy it, a little bit of spit and polish and fix it up and then flip it 6 months or a year later. I've done tens of them. I mean, there's just a lot of them out there doing that.
So when so the steps that you need to go through, the first step is the evaluation.
Yeah, typically when we meet with a seller, we review their actual gross sales, their actual expenses, determine what the value is, and then structure a marketing package that basically lays it all out for a buyer, so it's easy for a buyer to see its potential. Typically, a buyer pays for what it's been doing. So if a business is doing $10,000 a week, the price is going to represent $10,000 a week. But he'll buy it because it has blue sky. He'll buy it because he can. Many times, what we do is we actually show him the direction on how to get it up to $15,000, $20,000 a week. And a lot of it has to do with the location, competition, all the other stuff that goes with making a successful operation.
So then the next step would be, then they would
list it.
They put it on the market.
We list it.
And now, when you're putting it on the market, you would put together a whole package for that restaurant.
Yep.
With demographic. What would
Everything.
be in the package?
We compile obviously the equipment. We generate some kind of a rule of thumb value to the business. Excuse me. List of equipment. We analyze the tax returns to see where the numbers really lead us. Sometimes the tax return shows a loss, but meanwhile they built in a lot of other personal expenses into the business, and so we recast the tax returns. Analyze the lease. The lease is one of the most important parts of a sale, because if a lease is less than 7 years, or if a lease is costs a business operator more than 10% of their gross sales, it's hard to sell. So we spend a lot of time analyzing the relationships between the cost of the space and the viability of the existing lease, and whether it's assignable, not assignable, under what terms, so on and so forth.
So, they follow all those processes, and then
we market.
Yeah.
And then we market to all of our existing buyers. We have hundreds of buyers in every category. The big operators who are looking for the premier location in downtown Back Bay, financial district. We have the restaurateurs that don't want to be in Boston; they want to be in the suburbs, and they want a large parking lot. We have we have buyers for pizza sub shops. We have buyers who want to do nothing but breakfast and lunch. We have buyers that just want to do liquor stores. I have a plethora of Indians who are looking to buy convenience stores. They love convenience stores and gas stations. And
that's
as fast as they come up.
That's news to me.
Haven't heard that before. So and then in addition to the individual buyers, we advertise heavily on the internet. We do a significant direct mail program, because many times there's a buyer a seller who is looking for another location but doesn't know where to look on the internet. So by putting a direct mail piece in front of him, all of a sudden he sees something that he's interested in. And so there's a very integrated form of marketing that we use that involves the internet and direct mail. And then we have a huge network of other brokers that we cooperate with, and we split the commission with them and give them an incentive to work with us.
But, you mentioned, I think in the last segment we did, is the guy selling a restaurant, and he was an absentee owner. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or
not a
bad
good thing,
because I always have heard that if you're not present as the owner there every day and every hour that restaurant's open, then you shouldn't be in the restaurant business.
That I typically see that absenteeism happen when you have a very successful operation. The guy's making money, and so now he decides he's going to take more time off to spend time with the family, and little by little he starts enjoying his free time, and leaves it up to his managers or his assistant managers or his cooks and so forth. And when the cat's away, the mice will play. And eventually they end up losing it.
So you're better off as an investor in a restaurant where you have someone else that is also invested into
the thing. The problem with that is that if as in this case in the Concord listing I have, if the chef operator is partners with an investor who's not an operator, and there's a falling out, and the chef leaves, then the non-food person all of a sudden is running a food operation.
Oh, see, and
it's not a good mix,
right?
And that's when they get into trouble.
I mean, he can always go out and find a chef. I'm sure
you can, if you're lucky enough to find a good chef. And it's hit or miss.
Right. I mean, there's probably a process, a painful process that you'll have to go through.
Well, yeah. In this particular case, this particular restaurant had a great reputation. When the chef was there, did very, very well. When the chef left, he hired a couple of other chefs, one after another, and they literally destroyed the business because they weren't very good. And people have a bad meal or not as good a meal as they expect. They go elsewhere.
Well, I wouldn't mind the interview process for a chef. Because wouldn't you have to make them cook for you?
Yeah, cook and let me try what you have.
So, I mean, I would do like a morning interview, an afternoon interview, and an evening interview. That process could work.
It could.
So, if they're ever looking for someone to screen the potential chefs,
You're available?
I'll be happy to do that.
You got a deal.
Yeah, so now you have the property, you have the demographics, you have everything in place, you're marketing it. Someone comes along and they want to purchase that, or they want to see the property. Now it's your job to sell them.
Well, more than that, there's a qualifying process because interesting enough, you have the buyer who's interested, who's got experience, who doesn't have much money. Then you have the individual who's got plenty of money, who has been working in a sub shop, all of a sudden wants to buy a 200-seat full-service restaurant.
There's a marriage right there.
Right, except they don't qualify because ultimately the deal's going to fall apart. You really our biggest value to a seller is to qualify the buyers. If you don't have a buyer who has a significant amount of experience in that particular niche, whether it's pizzas or whether it's a full-service restaurant or it's a nightclub, if you don't have a buyer who has the experience and the money, not just the money for the down payment, but also the reserve capital, then it's not going to fly.
So do you ever do that by you have a guy that is qualified as far as running a restaurant that way, but doesn't have the money, and then you have a guy that's interested that's not qualified to run a restaurant, but he has the money.
Do you marry them?
Yeah, do you marry them?
Would you? No. Only because why would you go partners with a stranger? See, because you're really getting in bed with a stranger.
It's probably better than that.
Now, from my experience, it's tough. It's tough when you're married, let alone, if you're...
Well, that's why the closeness is probably more difficult than if it's someone you don't know. I mean, if you have a background check and you have, have them all checked up, each party.
Well, I know. The business is so incestuous that you really, really need to have... It's much better with a couple of friends, husband and wife, a couple of family members. And sometimes it works. Other times it's detrimental. So... It's really potluck. You really have to get lucky to do a joint venture with somebody.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I've seen very, very few actually happen that way. I've had more divorces, partnership divorces than I have joint ventures.
So anyone that really is interested in getting rid of their spouse, they should go in business.
Put them in business.
And the restaurant.
Well, what's really wonderful about the restaurant business, if you have a successful restaurant, the cash flow, the profit of that business creates a lifestyle. If you've got a profitable restaurant, whether it's a sub shop that makes $150,000 a year, and there's plenty of them out there that just do pizzas and subs,
right?
Basically low cost items. But that creates the new house, the Mercedes, the vacations with the kids, and so on and so forth. On the reverse, if you end up with a restaurant and you don't pay attention to it and it starts that downward spiral, everything you built up goes down the tubes and you lose everything you have. So it really takes a finesse to not only run a restaurant, but to buy a restaurant. And what we try to do is try to play the middle of the road, making sure that everybody wins. The buyer has to be satisfied. The seller has to be satisfied. And we never want to put anybody, and we never have really intentionally put anybody who is not qualified together with a seller just to make a deal. You really want to make sure that both sides ultimately are going to be friends with us. And we have, through the years, through 30-odd years, we know a lot of people who we don't have to cross the street when we see them.
Plus, if the majority of these restaurant owners are taking back the paper on it,
right?
I mean,
they're taking a big risk.
Yeah, I mean, they're not looking for it to just
to
get
fail.
Exactly
that
down
right.
payment and then and lose the rest.
When I first started, there was a restaurant on Route 1 called the Town Line House.
Oh yeah.
And I got a call one day from a gentleman. He says, "I just bought it." I said, "What do you mean you just bought it?" He says, "I need to see you." So I went to saw him. He had foreclosed. He had been loaning money to the owner of the Town Line House for years, and eventually they didn't make it. So he said, "I want you to sell it for me." So he wanted $1.5 million with $300,000 down. I found a couple of young guys. They made him a full price offer, but they only had $200 down. So he rejected it. He says, "I want $300,000 down." He says, "I'll be the bank. I own it outright." He says, "I'll be the bank." So 6 months later, the buyers come back with $300 down. So he really liked the kids. He said, "I'm going to do the deal." He said, "But I know they don't have any other money because they begged, borrowed, and stolen that extra $100,000 that I wanted down."
Right.
And he looked at me and he said, "Dennis," he says, "what can I do to make sure I don't get this back?" I was kind of dumbfounded because I was still young in the game. He says, "Tell you what I'm going to do." He says, "I don't need the money. I just want these guys committed to this." He says, "What I'm going to do is I'm going to take $100,000 of the $300,000, I'm going to put in an escrow account that they can draw on anytime they want. If they can't pay the rent, they got to fix something, they got to whatever."
Right.
He says, "But I'll put whatever they borrow on the back end of the deal." He says, "Because I want you to understand one thing. I'm more concerned with their success than me getting my money. Because if they're not successful, I'm going to have the same problem 6 months or a year from now."
Right.
That was a great lesson, and I use that story all the time. Because if the seller isn't as concerned with the buyer being successful, you end up with it back.
Well, it's
And you hurt people.
right. But was he in the commercial real estate industry?
No.
Real
He was just
estate?
he was a money lender.
Because a lot of them, the creative finance in buying commercial properties
Yep.
is just incredible what they do.
Yep.
Same thing with, I guess, guys that do flipping of properties. If they're good at it, they can borrow the money, get out of it right before they have to make
Dump
that
it.
giant payment on it.
Yeah.
Or the balloon interest, whatever happens, they get out.
Creative
before it.
financing.
Yeah. So everything's creative.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's the way to go if you're trying to sell a restaurant nowadays, especially at something $1 million.
Well,
That's a lot of money.
The key is to look at the debt service, because you've got two factors when you're running a restaurant. You've got your rent, which landlords can be a nemesis. They can be very difficult. So you get your rent, and then you get your debt service when you bought the place. So now if you balance your cash flow that's attributed to the rent and then also the debt service, that can be an imposing number. And so in structuring the deal, and sometimes what you do is you amortize it over a much longer period with a balloon at the end of 5 years. You give the business a chance to mature under new ownership.
Right.
And ultimately it works out pretty well. And if they can't make it, we turn around and resell it.
Well, it works out for you.
It does. I catch them
You
going
keep
in.
selling the same thing.
I sold the same restaurant 5 times in 10 years. I catch them going in and catch them going out.
So now, if you really want to be a broker in this industry,
It's
great.
Well, what we do is we provide a service. If you're a successful operator and you're looking for another location, we're the people that find you another location. If you're in trouble and you need to get out of your business, we can help you get out. We're not selling vacuum cleaners or life insurance
Right.
that you don't need. We're helping you with a problem.
Well, I think we made good time on Mira Ezra's time that he didn't show up because we filled up that segment really quick. And our interview with Dennis our ongoing interview with Dennis, and my co-host for the day is brought to you by Command Security Corporation, is the nation's most trusted and experienced provider of affordable contract security services. Command Security Corporation, with offices nationwide and operations at numerous major international airports, they provide complete, customized, and cost-effective security solutions for industries, businesses, institutions, and organizations of all sizes. To find out how Command Security Corporation can solve your security needs, contact John Dunleavy at 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com. That's John Dunleavy at 800-791-9102 or go to commandsecurity.com, and we'll be right back on Money Matters Radio Network.
It's New England Real Estate Journal Radio on the Money Matters Radio Network and online at moneymattersboston.com.
And we're back on New England Real Estate Journal Radio. I'm Rick Kaplan with my co-host Eric Wilson, who's not here. I got to keep saying that because, he abandoned me. But we have a much better co-host today.
Much better.
Is Dennis Serpone.
I like that.
He's been filling in
much
for Eric.
Better.
Our show today is brought to you by New England Real Estate Journal, bringing together the commercial real estate industry for over 50 years. Find us at nerej.com. If you'd like to be a guest or sponsor for the show, call 800-654-4993 or email us at radio@nerej.com. Again, that's 800-654-4993 or email radio@nerej.com. Or you could tweet us at Ricky Cap would be for me, or radio, or NEREJ Radio for the show. What's your Twitter handle?
I don't have one.
Okay.
I don't.
All right,
I'm looking to have a Facebook account.
But we appreciate you coming on, helping us out, co-hosting the show. Filling in for Eric. I know they were big shoes. Because he's 6'4", and he's got like a size 12. But we have some events that are going on. We actually have our event in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's Cocktails and Conversation, and we have all the associations we're bringing. And we like to also announce one of our big platinum sponsors is the City of Rochester, New Hampshire. Is one of our big platinum sponsors, and that's going to be June 11th at the Sheridan Harborside, Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And it's going to be 6 to 9.
I'll be there.
And Dennis will be there.
I'll be there early and leave late.
And I'll be there, and we'll be doing our show from there as well. We also, I know there's a couple of things in Rhode Island that are going on. Let me check those out. I know there's a Rhode Island Realtors Conference, and that's in June. I don't have the exact date on that, but May 23rd is the Power of Place Summit in Rhode Island. That's at the Rhode Island Convention Center. If anyone's interested, they can go to that. And you have anything that's going on, Dennis?
Yes, we have. I have a singles organization, and we run trips for single professionals. Our trip to Ireland in October is already booked solid, but we do a Mexico trip in January. We do an Italy trip normally in the fall. We do a Bermuda cruise. I think we have one coming up in August. I think there's some other one. I can't think of what it is. But
if someone wants to find out about those, this is you have real estate.
Yeah, we have a group. Yeah, we have another group. We have singles in real estate. So most of the people, I'm assuming, are in the real estate market that are listening to the show. So half the population is single. So we have a website called singlesinrealestate.com. So I'm not sure if it's even updated yet, but we run cocktail parties every so often for single professionals in the real estate industry. Actually, I think we have one in 2 weeks in Boston at a restaurant in Copley Square, as a matter of fact, Vlora, which is a really nice facility. If anybody's interested, just go to singlesinrealestate.com, and it'll be listed there when our next event is.
So you heard it here. If you're single and you want to go to one of Dennis's singles events,
email me.
You can email
dserpone@comcast.net. DSERPONE at comcast.net, and I'll put you on the mailing list.
That's great. And I want to thank Dennis again for being a co-host and one of our sponsors for the show. So that's New England Restaurant Brokers. And I want to thank Command Security Corporation. I also want to thank the New England Real Estate Journal and also NEBFM 2014. And I can't forget the Dono Project in Hartford, Connecticut. They're always a great sponsor for us as well. And I think this deal is done.